soldiers speak out. We can tell the truth of what we mean. We are not.
Welcome to the Veterans Hour, a monthly program sponsored by the Veterans for Peace, Chapter 109, the Rachel Corrie chapter in Olympia, Washington. Our focus this month is a very special focus because it affects a number of soldiers coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan. And that focus is mental health for military service members and their families. One of our goals of Veterans for Peace is to seek justice for veterans and victims of war. And tonight we have a very special group of friends with us that are also concerned about victims of war and veterans, and that is Soldiers Project Northwest. I have with me in the studio tonight two guests, two friends, Dorothy Milser, who is a referral specialist with Soldiers Project Northwest, and triage and referral specialist, and we'll let her tell you more about that. Well, welcome,
Thank you.
Dorothy.
Thank you, Dennis.
And also with me is a colleague and a mentor for me when it comes to a variety of issues, and that is Randy Jensen, who is the director for Soldier Project Northwest. And I know I valued the workshop that I attended that you held recently. Welcome, Randy.
Well, it's my pleasure, Dennis. Thank you for asking us.
And tonight we are going to ask a number of questions that really affect veterans, but also all those around the veterans.
Correct.
And we hear the term, first of all, Soldiers Project Northwest. And I'm just going to throw the question out, and any one of you can pick it up, just sort of like I'm the basketball person who throws the ball in the air, and whoever hits the ball first has it.
Good.
So, Soldiers Project Northwest.
Right. Well, we are a group of clinical therapists who are all licensed in the state of Washington. This is the Northwest chapter. We're a chapter of a larger entity, a 501c3 nonprofit organization based out of California. And our mentor and founder, Judith Broder, is a psychiatrist down there. She's now retired, but she's working harder now than she ever did when she was working full-time. But she started the Soldiers Project in 2004, and we began here. Tricia Pierce was our first founder here in the state of Washington. She started off our chapter, and I took over when she started having some really physical problems and had to then relinquish her position with the Soldiers Project. I came on board a year ago, and I've been director of the Soldiers Project since then. And we started off in about 2007, and we've been going full bore ever since.
Now, Soldiers Project lets you know that it is a project, but it also relates to soldiers. In which way is that?
Well, it's a bit of a misnomer, because when Judith named the project Soldiers Project, that was before she realized that soldiers usually referred to the Army, and that she wanted to make sure that we were like a quote purple organization. In other words, we served all of the services. And but it caught on. The Soldiers Project caught on, and because we provide free mental health counseling, confidential mental health counseling, and totally free to any member of any of the services, regardless of whether they have actually fought in combat in Afghanistan or Iraq, because we do know that individuals are affected by other people's experience there, and you can go in a support position and still be seriously affected by the combat there. So,
well, I know that the founder visited something that is a project of Veterans for Peace, and that was Arlington.
Yes, Arlington West.
Arlington West, and we have our Arlington Northwest that we put up here. But she visited the beaches where all the markers were laid out, and that had a profound impact on her life. Tell us a little bit of how that then moved her to start offering mental health services.
She did two things. At the same time, she went to see a play given by 3 Iraq veterans. And that play made such a tremendous effect on her. She realized then that there were so many armed service individuals coming back and not able to get the services they needed because of the stigma against mental health counseling. They were afraid that they would lose promotions or that it would deleteriously affect them in some way. And Judah said, well, we have to do something. We just can't sit by and let these individuals suicide or drop by the wayside, become homeless. We can't let this happen. And so she decided, and then she went to see the Arlington West. And that, if anyone has a chance to see that, get the video and watch. This is so powerful to see all of those white crosses that completely fill the beaches there. And it's mind-boggling to see all of the individuals that we have lost over there. And when she went to see that, that was the impact. That's what she saw. She felt every single cross just touch her heart. And she knew then that there had to be a way she could get a bunch of clinical therapists together and have them donate hours to help these individuals.
Well, we do know that in talking with veterans, there is a real caution against seeking out help that is provided in the military.
Sure.
It goes on their military jacket.
Exactly.
That is, it goes on their records, and it does affect promotion, whether they say it does or doesn't. We've talked with people that that is the case. And we know that they have some excellent programs out there, but in many cases, the enlisted people who want to keep a career say that that is something I am not going to do, so that they suffer silently.
Yeah.
Whereas we're very thankful to see a project like Soldiers Project Northwest, because we see a number of veterans coming through Joint Base Lewis McChord who have been affected by war. How did you get involved in this whole project? I mean, someone roped you into this.
That would be Randy.
Me.
That would be Randy. Okay.
Randy put a distress call out, an SOS for help, when the project sort of came to her overnight, and she called me and said, I need help. And knowing Randy, I knew it would be a good cause, and I jumped in.
Well, now tell us a little bit about your background, because I know you have a PsyD.
I do. I have a doctorate in clinical psychology, and I have specialized in the treatment of trauma and PTSD. There's a lot of folks out there with a lot of pain, but we have some very good tools to help that. I'm also a 7-year Navy wife, so I know what it's like to be part of the military, to be part of the family that stays at home while the partner is gone.
And they're affected as well.
Exactly, yeah. And it's really good to see that that is being so acknowledged by everyone these days.
Finally.
Yeah.
Now, I notice your role, your title is, in many cases, you're the voice behind that, because if a person calls the telephone number, and why don't you say the telephone number, and we'll put that up on the screen.
All right. Our referral line number is 206-290-1035. That's 206-290-1035. And you'll talk to me.
And when they call that, they reach you. And
They reach
you are
me.
called basically the triage.
The triage person.
person.
When they call, I do a basic intake on them. You know, I get some demographic information from them, and demographics, important part is where are you located physically, because we want to get a therapist as close to them as possible.
Yes.
Because traffic can be overwhelming for some of our guys and girls, you know.
Well, and the military person or the veteran or their significant others in their life will actually go to the individual clinicians' offices.
They will. They go, it's just the same as any other person going to therapy. They go to the clinician's office, they sit down in the privacy of that office and have their conversation.
Okay. Well, I'm going to throw another question up in the air. Who qualifies to receive services with mental health services? Who qualifies?
Well, right now we're serving the Iraq and Afghanistan veterans and active duty, their family members, any concerned others. The best part about the Soldiers Project is that we serve individuals who normally would not get services at all. We serve those individuals who are disenfranchised. Either they have less than honorable discharges, or they have some mark against them. They may be involved in some adjudication somehow, or they're in a position where they're afraid to go for counseling, or they feel like it will really be a black mark against their career if they go. So we provide services for those individuals, and we hopefully then provide a safety net for some of those individuals who normally in the past have fallen straight through the cracks.
Well, I'm so pleased to hear you say that less than honorable can be served, because
Absolutely. Yes.
My colleague Mark and I provide Veterans Affairs benefit counseling at Coffee Strong just off of exit 122, and I know you're both familiar with that. And one of the things that we look at is their DD 214 to see will they be eligible for benefits. And if they're not, then we go through a lengthy process of saying how you can do an upgrade. But in the meantime, if they're having mental health issues, they can't wait that long. And then Soldiers Project Northwest can step in and provide that counseling. That is great. What kind of treatment is available? Because we talk about mental health, and then, boy, that's a large
It's a
area.
huge field.
Dorothy, why don't you talk about that?
Well, anything that any person could go to for treatment out of the general public, our Soldiers Projects folks can go to. We range from psychodynamic, cognitive behavioral, family, children, marriage counseling.
We do EMDR. We do what we call emotional freedom
we're going to
techniques.
use some terms that I'm familiar with.
Yeah.
I know the
That's
rapid
right.
eye, but you know, okay.
Well, let's just say this, that the important thing about treatment is, and we discovered, not just we discovered, but there's evidence-based treatment that says the important thing about treating most trauma is that, number one, you access the trauma event or events. And number two, you address the cognitions that are attached to that. Now, they're the thought processes. And usually they're negative thought processes, like the world is a dangerous place, I can't trust anyone, everyone's, I'm always in danger, and that sort of thing. So we have to be able, any treatment modality that we use has got to be multi-pronged in that way. It's got to address both the traumatic event and all of the thought processes that go along with that. And so we've discovered that there are several different therapies that work, but so long as the clinician addresses both of those issues, they will get to a point where there is healing and there is increased ability for the individual to be productive in society.
Now, Dorothy, you receive a call on the telephone line, and you can clearly tell that this is a person who's hurting, that the war experience has had some really damaging effects on them.
I don't think I've gotten one call where they weren't hurting.
They weren't hurting.
Right.
And sometimes they wanted to hurt themselves as a result of that. As a triage specialist, then, how do you link up that person with a volunteer therapist?
Depending on the circumstances, of course. Recently we had a young man that called who in the moment was very suicidal. And so within a few minutes, we had hooked him up with a suicide specialist, who is Randy.
Hello.
And she was on the phone talking with him. So he was in hands immediately. I'll take their information, look at the geographical area they're in, talk to them about whether or not you feel you can drive a distance to get somewhere. Some folks can't.
Because they can't. They drive or they have agoraphobia where everything is just closing in. They can't get out.
And talk to them a little bit about the symptoms they're experiencing, the thoughts they're having, whether or not they've been in treatment before. Did it work or not? What type was it? And then based on that information, then I go to the computer and the phone, and I start looking through our database of therapists, see who is in that area with a specialty that would help them the most.
Now,
and then we try to link them up.
Randy, how many therapists volunteer with Soldiers Project Northwest?
We currently have a little bit over 100 in the state of Washington, but we desperately need more.
Okay, here's the shameless plug coming in, at
shameless
least the first time.
Here it comes, guys. If there are clinicians out there, either you're a licensed clinician or you are getting your licensure, and you want to give back to this population, you want to make a difference, the Soldiers Project can provide you with online training with Alliant University, and we can give you experience dealing with military.
At no cost.
At no cost. It's absolutely free. All we need from you is to donate a minimum of 1 hour a week to give back to these individuals. And we are in desperate need right now because we are ramping up. We've passed now the honeymoon period of the last group that's come back. The honeymoon period usually is between 1 month and 3 months. And then the calls start coming in, and they are coming in fast and furious right now.
Yeah.
We need more therapists who want to give back, and this is a wonderful group of people to treat. And we can help you in all kinds of ways. We can provide consultation. We can provide ongoing update trainings. So if you want to give back, and we need you, please call us at thesoldiersproject.org or email at thesoldiersproject.org, or you can call us at 206-290-1035.
Okay. Now, I'm with a unit that was deployed to Afghanistan, and we just got back. And I'm talking with some of the guys in the barracks, and I'm starting to say some things aren't right. I went over and I was doing okay. It was my second deployment. I was in Iraq for the first deployment. Now something's happening. I don't know what it is. How do I get in contact to get some help? And I don't want to go ruin my possible career. I'm not sure yet if I'm going to stay in or not, but I know that I need help. So what are the different ways that I, as a soldier, can get in contact with a group of therapists who will provide the free therapy counseling sessions?
Dorothy is the one that they have to go through. They have to call Dorothy. But you know
Or email
what?
me.
Or email at northwest@thesoldiersproject.org. But we actually have gotten plenty of referrals from the National Guard and from the Marriage and Family Life Consultants there. They call us because they have situations where this individual needs help right this minute. We need to get in as soon as possible.
They can't wait 12 days.
Right. Well,
right.
even then, we had a call from an individual in Kitsap County, and he said, well, I've got an appointment for marriage counseling in 8 weeks with the VA, but my wife says we're not going to be married in 8 weeks. And that we have to get in now. And I was able to hook them up within 2 days, and they are very successful now. They've been in marriage counseling for about 8 months, and they're
that's
doing
great.
very, very well.
Will anyone know that that I'm getting therapy?
No, sir.
No.
And
The
how can that be?
The conversation is strictly between the therapist and the person. No reports are filed anywhere. It does not leave the therapist office.
And let's say somehow I just didn't click with Dorothy.
Yeah.
That I
How
can't.
could you not?
It seems impossible, but that one chance that might happen.
Oh, it
that
happens.
It happens.
The client with
It
the
does
therapist
happen.
is say, "This is just not working." Do you have another way that you can do this?
I do. When I refer someone to a clinician, I tell them I'm going to call you back in a week or so and see how it's going. And I will. I'll call them back in a week and make sure they've made that appointment. And then I'll call them back in a couple of weeks after that to see how it's going. And most of the time they say it's going really well. But sometimes they do say, well, it doesn't work. It doesn't click. And so if it's not going to work, we find someone else.
Do you have therapists who are same gender as veterans?
That's one of the questions Dorothy asks.
I ask them, first off, do you prefer to have a male or a female clinician?
Okay.
And we do have some clinicians who are vets also. So that is helpful. Sometimes an individual says, I just really want to talk to another veteran. And luckily enough, we have had quite a few of them who have volunteered with the Soldiers
Therapy
Project.
doesn't always rely on the person who's actually been a veteran. You know that, but sometimes the person inquiring doesn't, and they want the person to speak the same language or
Exactly.
understand.
And that's the part where the training comes in that they get, because they learn about military culture, and they learn a little more how to speak the same thing the veteran's speaking.
Well, I know that that you've talked before in some of your sessions about military culture, because you've been around other therapists who have no idea what this is about there.
Right.
Where are all these sessions held then? How?
The therapy sessions for the client, they get hooked up with a therapist in their area. Like, for instance, Dorothy will ask them, do you want therapy where around where you work? Do you want therapy around where you live? Or do you want therapy someplace else? And then she will find a therapist in that area, hook them up with that person, and then that client goes to that therapist's office. And like, for instance, when I was seeing this young person who was very suicidal, I said, I need to find an office. My office is in Shoreline, and I needed to find an office down around Federal Way. So I called one of our therapists and I said, could you possibly donate some time for me to come and see this individual down in Federal Way?
So you would still be the therapist, but using that office.
I drove,
Exactly.
just so that this person would not be on I-5 and suicidal. I went to him. I found an office space down in Federal Way, and I drove down there, and I was able to intervene on that situation in Federal Way. And we have several therapists who are willing to go to great lengths like that to make it easier for the individual to engage. It's extremely important.
Now, I noticed in looking at your bio, Dorothy, that you have trauma behind that as part of that.
Yes.
Tell us how that came about, that you zeroed in on saying, oh, well, this is something I need to look more into and become a specialist.
My beginning work in the therapy area was in a community mental health center. And I came to realize that not only were these folks dealing with major mental illnesses, but the majority of them were also dealing with major traumas in their life. And as they were fighting and juggling those two things, it was very difficult for them because you had to play both sides to get to the middle. And I thought, well, this is really where I want to be. I want to be one of the people that can bring some of the answers, hopefully. And seeing just how those folks could respond after a while with the right treatment, it was so gratifying that I knew this is where I wanted to be. You know, it felt like home.
I help veterans go to the Veterans Hospital. And in taking one veteran to the hospital, the person had an appointment, let's say it was the 12th of the month. And it's okay, we need to make appointment again a month later. And I'm thinking, this person has a great deal of problems.
Right.
What can therapy accomplish in a 45-minute or an hour session and then have to wait 30 days? What would you
You know, 45 minutes, you're really just opening up what's going on with this person. You need to be able to have enough time to open up a little and do some work. And they need to be able to come back when they've gone home and thought about that and get back as soon enough that those thoughts are still in their mind that they're wanting to work toward.
Well, and another problem too, Dorothy, is where's the therapist I had last month?
Yes.
Exactly.
Oh, well, the person's been rotated out, moved, and so they go right back over again, recycling the story and starting over again.
And you can spend 8 or 12 weeks starting over and get nowhere.
Right.
You know, there's so many studies and papers and things written that talk to the point of the therapist themselves and their connection to the person being so important in the healing.
That therapeutic alliance is just massively important. And when you have that broken from one visit to the next, you start over from point A, like Dorothy said, over and over again. And the benefit of a lot of our therapists is that they are able to donate more than an hour a week. Like, for instance, some of the patients that I've seen, some of the clients that I've seen, I could tell immediately they needed more intervention early on. They needed to get on solid ground as quick as possible. So I might see them twice a week. And the first time is usually a 90-minute session. Well, normally in a therapist's office, you go for a 50-minute session.
Oh, yes.
And my experience is it takes about 45 minutes just to get warmed up and get going. Then you got 5 minutes to spew out what's really important.
And no time to close it up.
And no time to close up. So
or give them homework or any
Right.
type of things that they can do on their own, or breathing techniques or whatever it might be.
We're not constrained by insurance, no insurance involved. So if a therapist is able to see an individual for a 2-hour session or 90-minute session, they can do it.
As therapists, do you talk to each other or have some type of things where you can share with each other, saying, here's some issues that I'm dealing with?
Yeah.
Have you tried EMDR, the rapid eye movement? Will this do anything? Or have you tried breathing techniques? Or you do this type of thing as
yes.
therapists?
We're available for consult, absolutely, but we have updates every so often too. We try to have them quarterly, where we provide new information, maybe information about new treatments and new research out. The last one we had, we invited the education specialist from the traumatic brain injury section, the unit there at Madigan, and we learned lots of information about the new treatments available for mild traumatic brain injury. And so we just continually bring in more experts because the field changes by day. I mean, I get research engines that come across my email that are constantly updating the new research involved with evidence-based treatments, and it's important to stay up on all of those.
Now, you use that term, and I want you to explain that to our audience. When we say evidence-based training, I mean, I'm an educational researcher, so I know evidence, but now I want to translate that to evidence-based treatment.
Right. Evidence-based treatment are those treatments that have been tested through research and have been retested for reliability. So an evidence-based treatment would be a treatment that has been tested on a certain number of clients so that they have been able to come up with research that supports that treatment as efficacious, as effective. And so that's what they, and so these research engines come across and they're listing out all of the treatments that are really, really beneficial, that have been shown to be very effective. And so we like to make sure that we make those available, those trainings available for individuals. And certainly, lately, we've learned that prolonged exposure, Dorothy and I had a class in prolonged exposure. We know that that is a treatment that is beneficial. However, we've also had calls from individuals who have had prolonged exposure and literally could not make it through the treatment. They couldn't hold it together. It was too intense.
Yeah, it was triggering more problems or anxiety.
Right. It's because it has to be done in a certain period of time. And they go by this manual, and they have to do this, and they have to. With our therapists, we go at the pace the client can tolerate. We don't push them past that point. We go with them. If they can't get the homework done in this week, well, let's look at this. Let's modify it. Let's change it so that we can build success into this treatment. So they'll come back and they'll feel better about it.
Let's talk for just a moment about TBI, because so many of the folks
signature
come back,
wound now of Afghanistan.
Traumatic brain injury.
Yes, that it's not visible. They may not even know they have it.
Right.
But it affects the way that they can do therapy. It affects whether or not they can get to the place where the therapy is held. So our training for our clinicians includes training on TBI, what to expect. You know, maybe you need to make notes for them. Maybe you need to call and remind them that this is the day you're going to come in, or tomorrow is the day. You have to go a little further than clinicians out in the main world would do. You have to be a little more of a reminder.
We've had to change our paradigm with this population, because normally a therapist would say, all right, if you don't show up for this appointment, that means you're not, quote, quote, motivated for treatment. That is not true with this population at all.
I'm hearing that with the Veterans Administration. You missed 3 appointments, you know, and they're looking at the thing, you know, and the person was in the middle of a panic disorder.
Exactly.
Right,
You know, and I had to tell the therapist,
or couldn't get out of the house.
You want to be in the car in front of the person who's having the panic disorder?
Exactly.
You know, I'll let you know when the person's headed down the road. Well, that stopped their pretentiousness.
Right, like Dorothy said, a lot of times what we do is we'll call them, like the morning of their appointment, we'll call them up. What I normally do is call them up and say, did you know you have an appointment today at 4:30 at such and such a place? And they would say yes. I say, okay, when are you planning to leave to get there?
Good point.
And they'll say, well...
reality check.
Yeah, right. And so then they'll say, oh, well, I'm going to leave at 3 o'clock. I said, well, you know, it's going to be right at the beginning of rush hour traffic. Could you give me a little more of a cushion there, all right? Maybe leave a little bit earlier than that. That would be good. And I tell them, it's okay if you get there early, we'll take you early. Don't worry about it. And because, you know, sitting and waiting is one of the hardest things to do as somebody with that anxiety.
Yes.
It just builds and builds and builds. So we try to build success into that also. And if they don't show up at that time, I call them immediately. If they're not there on the dot, I call them immediately. Where are you? Where are you? Come on down. Even if we talk for 15 minutes, come on down. And most therapists in most therapy offices, they would not do that. Because that would be considered rather codependent. That would be considered over the top as
This
far
is
as
understanding the military culture
Right.
a little bit
right,
more.
right.
The number of sessions before a person is, and I don't want to say the word healed, but is able to deal with some of their issues. How many are we looking at? Because I know if you go to the VA, it's, well, you got an appointment this month, come back next month.
Right.
And, you know, it's sort of like they don't see much improvement 4 months down the road. So how long is it going to take with a therapist with Soldiers Project Northwest before you can see, you know, some benefits?
What we know about military people is what we know about every single person on this earth. They all move at their own rate. And what is really beneficial about the Soldiers Project is we agree to take that client for as long as is needed.
Unlimited, not 8, not 12.
Not 10.
Unlimited.
We don't kick them out at 10, you know, no. It's as long as that client is willing to work on issues, our therapist will stay with them at no cost.
So this could be months or well into a
Could be.
year
Whatever
or
they
more.
want.
Could be.
Whatever they
Yeah.
want.
Now, Dorothy, we've been talking about veterans, but Soldiers Project Northwest, you said it was somewhat of a misnomer. I'm going to really have you stretch that more because it's not just soldiers that you work
No,
with.
it's
Tell us
not.
about the type of clients that you work with.
Let me refer to my statistics at this point, all right?
Yes, please do.
All right.
Yes.
And
There's
I've
some
got 'em in front of me
demographic
so
data
that I
you
don't
provided.
forget.
Yeah.
All right. 65% of the folks that come to us are male, 35% are female.
Okay.
The branch of service, Army is the largest.
Well,
Most-
and that would stand to reason because
Yeah.
of nearby Fort Lewis. Yeah.
Yeah, we have about 50%, 60% that are Army, and Navy, Marines, National Guard, and Air Force. But Army and National Guard right now are the ones that we're seeing the most.
Because they get the least services provided for them, and also the reserves, too.
Right.
So the difficulty with the National Guard is, and like the reserves, is they're out in the communities. They often don't identify themselves to, and their communities don't even know that they're in the reserve. And many families don't identify themselves as military families as such because they all hold civilian jobs.
They don't see themselves.
They
as
don't see
military.
themselves. And we had an incident where a young boy, 7 years old, left school and nobody knew where he was for a week. And he came back and the principal discovered that he had gone to his father's memorial service. His father had been killed in Iraq. How come no one in that school or community knew about this? Well, that's one of the big pushes with the Operation Military Kids is to get this information to the schools and to the community so they can support these families. That's one of the most important things about the National Guard and Reserve is they're out in the communities, but that's where our therapists are too. And
They're
we're
in the
dedicated
communities
to
where they
serving
Communities
are.
where
them.
they are.
We're
Yeah.
dedicated
Exactly.
to serving them.
Exactly.
I'm active duty, and I'm about to be deployed again. And I've started getting some therapy because on my second deployment, I started to see some problems, and I'm getting some help now. But I know in several weeks, my group is going to deploy, and I go with them.
Correct.
How can I continue getting the help that I started to get some benefit from? Or am I going to have to suck up, as the term would be used?
The military term?
Yeah.
Yep. Well, what we've done in the past, and what I've done personally, I had an individual who deployed, and what they did was they just call me whenever they could, and hopefully I was available. but we try to set up those visits by email. The difficulty was downrange. He did not have the privacy to discuss what he needed to discuss. So we had difficulty there, and it did, I must be honest, it did not work out well. But in other cases where individuals were able to find confidential space to talk, it has worked out well. So it just depends on the situation, where they are and how they're able to get sequestered in a place where they can talk.
Well, and now with high-speed internet that's provided just about everywhere, and you have Skype communication where with a webcam they can see you and you can see them. There's a variety of things that can be very beneficial.
And Dennis, right now we're testing a Skype case. We have a therapist working with a client right now who's testing out the Skype just to make sure the technology is compatible with the client's needs. And there are some glitches, there's some confidentiality problems, and we just need to make sure that we have all our bases covered before we do that.
Well, and I have a therapist friend in Croatia, in Vukovar, where the city was heavily bombed for 87 days, and people are traumatized years later.
Exactly.
And so he's investigating this whole thing of telepsychology, telemedicine type of thing, because they, even though in the same city, they may not even want to go to that particular office, but they have internet connection.
Right.
So that is a possibility.
Well, you know what Dorothy was talking about, the therapeutic alliance between a therapist and the client. You know, sometimes the method of gaining that is not as important as the relationship itself. And that relationship where that person, that client knows that this therapist is working with them, believing they can do it, trusting them, understanding them, and planning on building success into the therapy. That alone has been proven to be beneficial in healing. So it's important that you build that relationship wherever you can, however you can.
As wonderful as Soldiers Project Northwest is, there are other types of providers and services that our viewing audience really needs to be aware of. Which ones do you refer to or have some type of relationship with that you know will be of benefit to the soldier?
Well, I think the ones that we routinely refer to are Vets Meets Vets. They hook up a vet with another vet or another active duty person who is having difficulty, and they walk with them one-on-one, shoulder to shoulder. We also work with the American Legion and all of their posts who are willing to help individuals fill out those voluminous pages of applications to the VA and to everywhere else, that they're able to walk them through that. And sometimes they actually walk them through the VA also. They will take them to the VA, they will take them to their appointments. That reduces anxiety greatly, knowing that you have a mentor there who is willing to walk with you through this process. We have a lot of veterans service organizations, and like I said, the American Legion. We also have some people in the Elks and some people in other organizations like that we routinely refer to. And Dorothy, didn't we just refer to someone to the Vet Center?
Yes, we did.
Yeah, the Vet Centers are very, very helpful.
Yeah, what do vet centers do? This is a topic that we will be exploring in the near future.
Well, Vet Centers are a division of the Washington State Department of Veterans Affairs, and what they do is they provide group counseling and individual counseling for individuals with combat service. If they've been in combat, they're automatically, well, I shouldn't say that. If they've been in combat for a certain period of time, they're automatically eligible to go to a vet center. But vet centers also take care of individuals who are victims of military sexual trauma, whether they've been in combat or not.
1 in 3.
Right.
Yeah, whether they've been in combat or not doesn't make any difference. So they are just invaluable. They are invaluable resources. Individuals can go there, and what we have difficulty doing is getting groups together in our particular paradigm. So the vet centers provide groups, and veterans can go talk with other veterans who speak the same language, who have had similar experiences. And there is that simpatico, there's that instant understanding between them, and they're all therapist-led, so they're not just free-for-alls. but we have lots of organizations. We go to a networking group. Well, actually, we go to several. We attend very varied networking groups, and one of them is in Tacoma, where 30 or 40 different organizations get together. They're public, they're private, they're government. We all get together and talk about what
Well, is
services.
that the one at the Goodwill? Or,
Yeah, that's Heroes to Hometown.
Exactly.
Heroes
Yes.
to Hometown,
And
yes.
I must say, I will give them a plug for any of you out there who have services for the vets or for active duty. Please come to Heroes to Hometown. You can go to their website and you can get the information and the location. They're the second Tuesday of every month at Tacoma Goodwill. And we all get together and we talk about what services are provided, what things we might need. This is where you can go and say, well, I have an individual who has this need. Does anybody in the room know where I can get this need met? And invariably, a number of people speak up and say, yes, I've got that, or I know where you can get that. And it's a wonderful resource. Plus, we go to other networking meetings, too, to find out who can do what for whom.
You can also go to Heroes to Hometown and click on their links, and everyone can see all the different organizations. You may not
excellent.
even know it's out
Excellent.
there or that you need it until you
Yes.
see it. And then they can click again and get the whole page of what that organization is doing. So it's a hugely great.
They have links to equine therapy, to
Scuba
scuba therapy, to all kinds of things available. And you know, one thing that happens to the vets these days and the active duties, when they come back from their combat zone or their deployments, they get overwhelmed by the amount of services available. Just the opposite of what Vietnam veterans had. It.
Yeah.
You know, my husband's a
To
Vietnam
zero.
veteran to zero.
Right.
He had zero, yes. So, I mean, it's entirely different these days. And these individuals...
God.
Yeah, thank God it's different these days. But it can be overwhelming for these individuals when they come back. So what we like to do is very gently present some options to them. We don't dump them all on them at once.
And there's organizations out there that take these returning veterans and give them a job to do something. Most of them over there were in control and in command of something. And so there's like the ones building the ramps and doing all these organizational help
rebuilding
things.
South Sound.
That put them to work, let them be of service. That's what they've been doing for a long time.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm going to switch topics to a little bit darker one, and that is suicide rate among our
Yeah.
veterans. The Circuit Court of Appeals and General Shinseki said 18 veterans are killing themselves every day.
Every day.
And in April alone, we knew that there were 25. That's public record. And Randy, I know this is close to your heart. And
That's my bailiwick.
Yes, and it's also a time that we can plug your upcoming book. Would you tell us the title? It's sort of catchy.
You go, girl.
I would be happy to do that. The name of my book is going to be e-published in July, and it's called Just Because You're Suicidal Doesn't Mean You're Crazy. And it's all based on the neurobiology of suicide. And it's something that I discovered while I was learning about the neurobiology of addiction and addictive thinking. And so what I talk about in the book is just how you can get into this neural pathway of suicidal thinking.
It's a rut.
It's a rut. It's
Yeah.
an absolute rut. You can get in it and you can't get out. And it's because it's driven by those good feelings that you get when you get relief from a certain pain or a distressing thought. So what I'm trying to do, I'm actually building a proposal for the Army. Hopefully they will be able to introduce
Well, you recently
this.
gave a workshop, did
Yep.
you not, at
I
the
did.
Joint Base?
It's based on the JSP3, which is the Jensen Suicide Prevention Peer Protocol. And I'm hoping to introduce this because it's such a simple protocol where 3 people get together to hold that suicidal person and to keep them alive until they have the strength to keep themselves alive. And it's such a simple protocol. It's easy to learn. And I'm hopeful that the Army will adopt it. Just kind of sitting on pins and needles waiting to see, because it is very simple. And you know, the people that I have presented this to already, have informally implemented it very successfully. I've been implementing it for years and years because I treat chronically suicidal individuals. So the beauty of it is that most of my patients look at me and say, why has no one ever told me this before? And I usually tell them because nobody knows it. And I'm trying to get that information out, and hopefully my book will help. And I thank you, Dennis, for that shameful plug.
There you go.
Done very well.
You get a telephone call, and you can tell
Right.
that this is a person who, is going through some numbers, telephone numbers, and you can tell that, yes, they have PTSD, they may have panic disorder, they may
Right.
have a variety of things that the DSM-4 manual,
Very
you're
seldom
you're
is there
plugging it all
one
down.
thing.
Right.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, I don't want to keep on living like this. And what goes off in your mind?
Get some help immediately. Get them to someone, someplace that
Not
as Randy,
weeks from now, but-
no, that will, as Randy said, hold them. Hold them in their care until they can do something
And
for
Randy
themselves.
says three, like a three-legged stool
Right.
type of thing.
Yep. A two-legged stool
Yeah.
doesn't hold up
Yeah,
too well.
because Dennis went on vacation. Whoops, now what
Now
happened?
who's there for me?
Yeah.
Yep. And what the beauty of it is that these three individuals who formed this coalition for the individuals who's suicidal, they are all schooled and they understand what to do in every case. And they're chosen by the suicidal person, so they trust them automatically. It's not going to be somebody they don't know. It's not going to be somebody
It's not going to be appointed by someone
right,
else.
Right. It won't be appointed or what they say like in the military, voluntold to do it.
How do I, as a veteran, become suicidal?
Oh, that is very easy to answer. You're in the military. You're taught to be able to provide protection for yourself and for your buddies. And in order to do that, you must be able to take a life. You must be able to understand that that's important and that you're protecting our way of life. But it doesn't help when you come back and you can see that image in your head and you see it over and over again, and it is intrusive in your thought patterns, it's intrusive in your day, it creates anxiety and pain and moral injury. So you name it in the military. It doesn't have to be in the military. People can endure all kinds of abuse also in a civilian situation where they began to feel like there is no way out. There is no way out. And as soon as they start thinking about taking themselves out of the situation, there's no more problem solving and there's no more critical thinking.
And I attended the workshop that you gave on this whole thing, and you talked when a person starts thinking about it and it becomes a good thought in their mind.
It's a hopeful thought. They're going
It's
to
a
be
hopeful
relieved.
thought. They'll be relieved of the pain that they're going through.
One of the signs you look for someone to commit suicide is that all of a sudden they're happy. It's because they've made their plan and they're going to carry it out, and there's no
there's
worry.
no good reason
Right.
why they
Yeah.
should be that happy.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
it.
Yeah, they found
If
their
our
solution.
viewing audience knows that they have a loved one or they themselves are thinking about that, they can call the 206 number here. But
Absolutely.
who else
Sure.
can they call too? Because there is a,
They can call the suicide hotline.
okay, and
And
we'll have that up on the
crisis
screen
line.
too,
Right.
the crisis
Crisis
line.
lines.
They can do
Each
that.
county has one.
They can call the military suicide hotline. They can call Military One Source. The difficulty is that to getting into somebody as quick as possible. That's what you've got to do. You've got to get some relief quick as
Well,
possible.
and I've tried some things where if I were the soldier in distress, I called and we are closed, office hours are such and such, and this is Friday.
Right.
Please call 911 if this is an
Yes,
emergency. And you're
yes,
thinking, well, of course it's an emergency, or I
Yeah,
wouldn't have called.
Yeah.
And
On
now
our
I'm at
pamphlet-
wit's end.
Yeah, on our pamphlet, our number says it's 24/7, and it is
Yep.
24/7.
We will try to get back to you as quick as we can. If we're on another call, we'll make sure that you leave a message. By the way, if you call, please make sure that you speak very slowly and very distinctly and leave that number at least twice. what we've discovered dealing with the military, and they talk like this, and Dorothy said
They're
the
always
other
in a
day,
hurry.
Dorothy said the other day she had to push the reset
About
button
5 times,
about,
yeah.
about 10 times,
10
and she
times.
still was not quite sure that she got the number
Mm-hmm.
right. So if you call, speak slowly, spell your name if you can, and leave a very clear number.
We are getting near the end of our session, and it seems like we've only touched
We just
the
started.
beginning
Yeah, I know.
Just started.
of the issue. All of this is free to the veteran.
Absolutely.
So how can Soldiers Project Northwest, or even Soldiers Project in general, receive funding to get this going? Because you have telephone bills, you have transportation, you have a
They have
variety of
printing and copying.
expenses,
Oh,
copying. I know this takes resources.
Yep.
So how can our viewing audience become involved? Because, you know, we as Veterans for Peace are quite concerned in treating victims
Right.
of war. How can they help you as an organization?
Well, I will tell you this, as the director of the Soldiers Project Northwest, I want to make sure that you have the opportunity to give back in whatever way you can. If you can't give your time, then you can certainly give a donation. You can go to www.thesoldiersproject.org and you can donate there. And we really appreciate it because we're privately funded. We're a 501c3, but we just became a nonprofit organization in September.
Really? That's
So,
soon?
yeah,
Okay.
so we are really, really struggling for funds, and we're always fundraising,
As all
aren't we,
nonprofits
Dorothy?
are
Yeah,
nowadays,
it's difficult, but if you want to give back, please go to our website, thesoldiersproject.org. You can donate there, and it will help us help them.
We have just about a minute or two, and I would like to at least give you each a minute in just sharing from your heart what you would like our viewing audience to know about either you or the work that you're doing. And so I'm going to turn this over to you, Dorothy.
All right.
You get your 1 minute in the limelight here.
Wow. Okay. What I would like you to know is that there are a lot of folks that are hurting, and there are a lot of folks that are willing to help. We have therapists that come forward and volunteer that are salt of the earth people. We talked about how the alliance between therapist and client is so important. These folks that come forward to help are wonderful people. So don't put off calling us because you think you may not connect with someone. We have great therapists, and we want to hear from you.
Thank you, Dorothy, and I'm so glad that you're able to be here.
Thank you.
We appreciate your insights and
Great
sharing
to be
with
here.
us.
Thank you.
And Randy, your 1 minute.
All right. Well, let me just tell you this, that first off, Dennis, I want to thank you so much for this opportunity to be able to talk with you and to be able to talk with the folks out there. It's extremely important that you know that we're working as hard as we can to keep as many people alive as we can so that they can understand what they're here on the earth for. And we want to keep families together, we want to keep relationships together. And in order to do that, we need help from clinicians. We also need help from the public. We need funds. We also need just the benefit of knowing that you're behind us is wonderful. And I'll tell you this, if you're a clinician out there, you're worried about whether you can actually work with this group, it is probably, out of all of my tens of years of therapy and doing work with individuals, this has got to be the most rewarding work I have
Absolutely.
ever done in my life. Knowing that these individuals are being put back together, they're reintegrated in society, they found a new purpose in life, and to just be any tiny part of that has been a wonderful experience.
Well, thank you, Randy, and thank
Thank
you
you,
for being
Dennis.
here.
Thanks, Dennis.
Tonight, you've had the opportunity to hear from two specialists dealing with trauma of war. And if you are in a position where you need counseling, I encourage you to look at the credits as we close now, because we will have that again as to how to contact and talk with Dorothy, and Dorothy will find the therapist that best meets your needs. We are the Veterans for Peace, Chapter 109 in Olympia, Washington. This program, it comes to you courtesy of Thurston Community Television. but it also is shown on the internet after it is shown on the television station. So we want to thank our viewing audience and especially our guest tonight. Thank you.
Dennis.
Thank you, Dennis.
Good night.
Soldiers, speak out. We have a duty to all children and to their futures. Soldiers, speak out. 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 We can tell the truth of what we've seen. We are not liars. Soldiers, speak out. We have a duty to all children and to their future.